The fact that you don't do enough hard stuff is making you depressed. You're just a person that doesn't follow through with stuff. That's the character you start to build. If you quit a lot and you don't challenge yourself as much, I think you have a low dopamine release. What's up, everybody? Coach Stefan here. Welcome to the Everyday Pursuit podcast. I got Coach Mike back on here with us. Say what's up, Mike.
What is up?
Mike's at the gym, just got done training some people. But guys, I want to talk about quitting, and I brought Mike on because if you don't know a little bit about Mike, Mike likes doing hard stuff. Okay, I do too. I like challenging myself. But Mike has been everywhere from doing basically professional martial arts, training in Thailand, doing Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, to being on Navy SEAL survival shows, to running marathons like he did a couple days ago with zero training. He's kind of crazy. But I want to go through that because I really think the habit of quitting, okay, has such long-term negative effects on your brain and the way you operate. And I want your perspective from people, both I'm not tooting my own horn, but I challenge myself. I like to do hard things and what it's done and transformed my life. But also I see this with so many clients that come to us, and Mike, I'm sure you can agree, dude. I really think the fact that you don't do enough hard stuff is making you depressed. Just as a overarching theme, like the fact that you don't challenge yourself enough and you quit things is actually leading to a lot of your low confidence, your depression, a little bit of your anxiety. And I'm going to tell you how I started to overcome some battles, and Mike will share too, and how our clients, how we've seen them actually overcome. I'm not saying it's a cure. I'm saying overcome some depression, some anxiety, some low confidence just by doing hard things and following through. So, Mike, walk me through a little bit of your journey, because you're the guest on here, of what are some hard things you've done, and what's the overarching theme that you came out on the other side, and some takeaways.
I think everything in my life was hard. Pretty much I have a martial arts background. I fought professional Muay Thai, amateur MMA, everything regarding actual fighting and not like karate or whatever. Some karate is pretty good, but real martial arts, not Wing Chun or nunchucks or anything like that. But it's tough. Wrestling, you have a wrestling background. You know how wrestling is one of the hardest sports you can do.
Nope.
There's a grind that goes on. But yeah, I've just exposed myself with the help of my father. Obviously, my father was a great boxer, and he got me into boxing and martial arts from a young age. And I think that kind of just set me up for success with just knowing that you kind of learn the reward, that there's rewards to hard work. And I don't think a lot of people have that. Just, lack of sport choices or wrong sport choices when they were younger, or just less intense things no offense, golf compared to other, obviously golf, I would say, is a little bit physically easier on the body than wrestling would be. So
A little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. So getting taken past your perceived limits, I think, is going to be the biggest trend that we see here. So, with weights, not a lot of people have the mindset to push heavy weight. So when it gets difficult, they put the weights down. They go, I'll do another set later. When someone's fighting you, they don't stop. So, if you're tired first round, you get nervous or something, first round, you're exhausted. Well, congrats. You have to survive 4 more or 3 more or whatever.
Yeah.
And so you get pushed past your limits, and then you realize that those limits were kind of bullshit. And they were all here in your brain. So then you just start getting to this point where it just becomes autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, yeah, I know it's going to suck, but I can do it, obviously. Just got to do it. And so you just get in these habits where you just do it. There's no, Andrew Huberman, neurobiologist, he talks about it. He calls it limbic friction. The limbic system is a part of your brain with motivation and behavior. And people have a lot of what he calls limbic friction. If they do not do things they don't want to do, they like to stay in their comfort zone, and their life becomes kind of stationary and mundane when they do that. And then when they start stepping out of their comfort zone and be like, oh, I hate cold water. Well, you should do ice baths then. Why? Because they suck and you hate that. And then when you do that, you're going to break barriers, and then that's going to transfer to all other areas of life. So it's just that overarching theme of doing things you don't want to do, and it will actually improve your quality of life and make you stronger and just keep pushing the boundaries. And then before you know it, you're
Yeah.
superhuman. You do whatever you want.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'll do a little bit of story time because I think you guys knowing my perspective, maybe this is your first episode, maybe it's not, but I do have a wrestling background. I played sports from 3 years old, ever since I can remember. But the hardest sport I ever did was wrestling. If you've done anything in martial arts, it's hard. Fight training in general is like the for me, out of everything I've done, is the most physically challenged. Obviously, if you're like a Navy SEAL or a Green Beret or Special Forces, that's just like the next level. But like for most people that have played any athleticism or train, I do think wrestling training is the hardest training I've ever done. I've done a lot of brutal training, and that was a huge mental unlock for me because if you don't know my background, I really struggled in school. I kind of felt like I was dumb, and then when I did wrestling, even though I still didn't feel academically inclined, it just unlocked this thing where like if you get pushed to your limit to where you're like literally in tears, like so physically challenging that you're broke. You're broke mentally, you're broke physically, and then you still have to go. You you unlock a new potential where you're like, it's not that bad. That's number one. That's number one of it. And then another thing is you're like, I wonder if I could do the same thing in other areas of my life. It doesn't mean it's going to be a perfect transfer, like, oh, I can accomplish anything in wrestling. So let me go be an astronaut.
Billionaire.
Doesn't work like that. Yeah, but the grit and potential, and I think in this society we lived in a soft ass society. That's the truth about it. That like it's becoming that way where the grit and the like buckling down, it's not there anymore. And I'll admit, I'm sure Mike too. We all have like a soft, comfortable side. Like nobody that I know, not one person has been like everything I've said I was going to do, I accomplished my mind, and I never quit once. We've all quit. We've all been there. But my question is like, does it feel good to quit? No. And what does that
I
do?
wouldn't
Right? Because
know.
that's what this is. Yeah. Well, what
Uh,
does it do to you? Right? Like, let's talk about short term and long term. Okay.
yeah.
So short term, and this is just, I'll give you some science, I'll give you some data. I have an article pulled up here, which is really cool. I'll read it to you guys in a second. But short term, quitting feels good. That's why we do it, right? Like the you actually get a dopamine release, I believe, a small one when you first quit, because you're getting what you want, right? Like when you get out of the ice bath, right? Or when you don't do it, you're avoiding it and you're getting the comfort, and the comfort feels good. So short term, I actually think that it's not a win. Okay, we all know that, but it's like okay, I got my way. But then what happens? Usually, what settles in is like the remorse, the regret. Like I should have done it. I should have worked out. I shouldn't have ate that food. Like the reality sets in. So you basically blanket your reality, and if you were to like step back, go in a room, be quiet, be silent, you're like, I know I should do this. But like you really have those two versions, like the little devil, the little angel, and one side is like, do it. The other one's like, no, don't. You give in to the not good side, and you get that short-term win. But we know it always, always, always comes with like regret and remorse. And it also builds a factor in yourself, even at a subconscious level, that like you don't follow through. Like you've quit before, it's easier to quit again, right? The gym didn't go that well. You could just start Monday. And I just did an episode a couple weeks ago on this. And so I think short term it's damaging, but the long-term effects are even crazier, which we're going to dive into. And I'll tell you what, guys, fitness, just for like Mike is probably the same way, comes easy to us, easier than some people, right? There's other things in my life that I've been super open about on this podcast where I don't follow through. So I don't want you to think I'm a machine and you're like, oh, you don't get it. You never, no, dude, I have things where I'm like, I'm going to start reading, I'm going to read a book this month. I don't read shit. So I've been there. Okay. I've quit things that I've tasked myself to, but I'll say even something that small, next time I'm like, all right, I'm really going to read, right? We all do that. I'm really going to do it this time. I know that I'm kind of full of crap. Like I know that there's a chance that I couldn't follow through, and it's actually maybe a reality. So I go into tasking myself less confident, and that's detrimental because every time I tell myself I'm going to do it, I have less belief. Like if we're being honest, right? You have a little less belief that you're actually going to do it. And that's why you see people try to, like, they say internally, the internal narrative, I'm going to do it on Monday. I'm going to start meal prepping. Why do you keep having the same repetitive ass conversations over and over again? There's no action. Well, every time you have that conversation and you don't follow through, you know you're less likely to do it. Right? You have less confidence. If I'm like, I'm gonna try to bench this weight and you couldn't bench it 30 times, the 31st time you're like in your head, you're like, all right, this probably ain't going up. Right. And so it's like you don't notice the long-term effects, but those effects start carrying over in other areas of your life. You're just a person that like doesn't follow through with stuff. That's the character you start to build. You're like, I don't. And you're like, well, I'm really successful in my business and I have a great marriage, whatever, and you're not in shape. I'm not saying you can't have great good those areas of your life, but they bleed. They bleed every time. You might not notice it. They might not bleed now, maybe not next week, maybe not next month, but you're going to start seeing that bleed. And I know, Mike, you've worked with a lot of clients. What are some things that you've seen for people that, you know, obviously our clients are higher commitment now, but maybe when they first come with you that you've seen that like quitting mindset affect them? Walk me through that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes to just habits, and I think quitting often breeds excuses. Like when you quit, you come up with some logical explanation of why you quit, and in their head, it makes so much sense. Oh, well, I quit. Yeah, I was, my shoulder, and I got this thing or whatever. Like, yeah, I'm not saying injuries aren't real, but a lot of things are self-perceived as limitations and stuff, and someone will just completely avoid something as opposed to being like, oh, well, I can't do this, but
Yeah.
I can do this instead. And they just have that like losing mentality, and they love excuses on why they didn't do something or whatever. Like, oh, sorry, I didn't. Even though I paid in full, sorry, I didn't talk to you in 4 months. It's just let me explain to you what happened. And then in my head, I'm just like, it doesn't matter. Nothing
Yeah.
happened that was so crazy that required you to just not take any accountability, not communicate, not say, hey, I'm experiencing this right now or whatever. It's just excuses, and
Yep.
you see that a lot out of people that don't do hard stuff.
Yep.
Excuses, and then it just becomes more of an option in the future. Like if you are used to making excuses or used to quitting, you're gonna. It's now an option permanently. Oh, I could just quit. That's simple.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said it perfect. And I talk about this a lot in this podcast because I think this is, if people could solve this one thing, bro, I think people would be unstoppable. And I'm guilty of it is people love their legitimate excuses. Like
Yep.
what you said, we legitimize something and we don't pick like stupid excuses like, oh, my left toe hurt. We use things that are like that we could get confirmation bias on. So basically we could tell somebody else and
Oh
we're
yeah.
hoping that person goes, no, I totally get that. Right. Like we want the most real excuse because then we can buy into our own BS and lie to ourselves. We're really good at it and we're very smart to ourselves. And it's a dangerous place. You have to do a lot of brutal honesty and step outside the box, but it's easier to do when you quit. Okay. And here's the thing, too. If you quit a lot, if you quit a lot and you don't challenge yourself as much, I think you have a low dopamine release. I'm serious. I mean, think about this. Think about one thing. Take a second right now. Think about one thing that you've done that you challenged yourself. Like it was hard, not like, oh, it's kind of challenging. No, like really hard. And you followed through and you finished it and hopefully you crushed it. How good did it feel? We know things that are earned feel better. Like you work all summer for 5 summers and you save up cash and you buy the car in your money. Feels 10 times better than just getting it given, right? And maybe when you first get the car, it's the same release, but like 2 months later, when the car that was given to you, that dopamine release is gone. It's just a car.
Stop taking
Versus
care of it.
if you, yeah, versus if you worked for it, that is your baby. We know we've all been in a situation like that, which means that hard work and earning it is actually a better feeling. Right? Like, I don't think anybody would argue that. I think we all know that. Um, and so if you're not challenging yourself, and that's a dopamine release, it's not just a dopamine release, but it's a sense of pride and ownership and confidence. It's all this bubble, right? And when we look at people that accomplish things, great fathers, great leaders, great whatever, it takes confidence, it takes leadership, it takes ownership. And that stuff starts to fall away when we create this habit of quitting. And I could tell you that, like, me physically challenging myself, and I'm not as good in other areas, but as I've been a business owner, an entrepreneur, and being a husband for longer and a father for longer, I can tell that like me challenging myself physically has made me the mentality of like, not that I am yet, but like I can be a beast as a husband, as a business owner, as a father, because I do hard stuff. It's nothing, bro. Like it is nothing. I will do it. I will. Not like I might. No, I will. Undoubtedly. Well, why? Because I tell myself I'm going to do these like stupid hard things that are super uncomfortable and I do it. And then you start getting, and I know Mike, you're like this too, where you're like, oh yeah, that, yeah, I'm gonna eat that. I'm gonna crush it. Zeroed out. And you get this like stupid, unwavering confidence. It's hard. It's a muscle. It's a muscle. And just like any muscle, you got to work it over and over and over again. And the first time is the hardest, and the second time is kind of hard. But think about it. Like, think about you went in the gym and you've squatted 100 pounds 1,000 times. You go in the gym 1,001, your 1,000 first time, and you're like, oh, this is nothing.
Yeah.
But it's the repetition, it's building a muscle, but it goes both ways, which is what I talked about. Like if you're quitting, if that's like your number one thing, if you know that you don't follow through, you're going to start having doubt. And that's a really hard thing to be a leader. And actually, I'll break it down a little bit of science, and then I'd love to hear your thought of it. Now, there's an article, and this is like from behavioral scientists. It's actually called, oh, the writing went way down. So let me see if I can get this a little bit up because it there. So it's called Breaking Bad Habits. Um, why is it so hard to change? And this is what one of the university professors kind of talked about. It says humans are much better than any other animal at changing or orienting, orienting or behavior or our behavior towards long-term goals. And sorry, it's kind of hard to read, or long-term benefits, says Dr. Roy, a psychologist at Florida State. His study, he basically studies decision making and willpower, have led him to conclude that self control is like a muscle. That's what he said. Once we've exerted some self control, like a muscle, it gets tired. So, this is, I'm going to pause and I'm going to say, this is actually what we see a lot with fitness. People sit there and they start and they go, let's go January 1st, first of the month, whatever, Monday. And they do it and they have all this willpower. And people go, oh, willpower's, motivation. No, it's like a muscle. You actually like feel exhausted from it, right? Like you can't go 100% and have a maximal willpower every day, right? So what happens is people like burn out on that and
Mhm.
then they lose it, right? But he said, after successfully resisting a temptation, this doctor's research shows willpower can be temporarily drained, which can make it harder to stand firm on the next time around. Again, what we're saying, like after you're like, I'm not going to eat any, I'm going to cut out all bread, all sugar for a week. Well, why can you do that the first week, but not the second week? Physiological stuff aside, right? Like besides you having lower glycogen or glucose storage.
Addiction.
And from his research, he said in recent years, though, he found evidence that regularly practicing different types of self control, such as sitting up straight or keeping a food diary, can strengthen your resolve. And those are just two things. But basically, the overarching theme of that is like challenging yourself in other ways will like build that up. Again, it's a muscle, right? If you only bench press for your chest, you do nothing else, just flat barbell bench, be all right. But if you start doing like different sets and different reps and different volume and different movements and bands and all this stuff, it's going to become so much more capable and so much more resilient. And I know, Mike, you can relate to this. I'd love to get your advice. I think we both do hard stuff in multiple areas of our life,
Oh yeah.
right? Like what are, I mean, I know fitness, people know, right? We're fitness coaches. We challenge ourselves. We're in the gym, we're grinding. Well, what are some things in your life that you feel like help you just build the like toughness mentality where you don't want to quit?
Faith. I mean, that's a
Yep.
huge thing. Obviously, me and Stefan are both Christian. We have the Bible as our spine and our background, and it's what keeps us going. We have a purpose, which is huge. Some people, that aren't don't have faith or whatever. Sometimes they're just kind of floating around. You don't know why they're doing anything. If you don't believe in anything, it's kind of hard to, you know, have some sort of motivation to do something. I guess if you think you're not to get into a spiritual argument, but if you think that you're meaningless and you're just floating through space, you're space dust, and you're just going to die and nothing matters, you kind of you know difficult to want to become something, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, I think everything becomes a challenge. I mean, relationships, maintaining relationships with people, marriage. Um, it just makes you. I I'm firm on my belief that fitness translates through all areas of life. It is the replacement of us working a labor job or being farmers and having to, we're living in the woods. It's you need to do something difficult. You need to do something hard. You need to struggle in your life to overcome or to enjoy yourself. Like, me and you can't go on vacation. That's like one of the things that we like have no ability to do. We're like, on the beach for like 2 or 3 days. And you're like, all right, I'm ready to work again. Like we're just recharged and like want to jump right back in. People are like, oh, I wish if I had $1 million, I would do nothing. I can't. I can't do nothing. I
Yeah.
need challenge in my life. I live off of challenges.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's purpose driven, right? Like, you know, faith, religion aside, um, and that is a big part of who I am, and I know who you are, and I do feel purpose driven, and I feel also a purpose driven for like the gifts that God put me on this earth to do,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, it's being an awesome husband, being a good father, being a leader, helping people with fitness. Like I know that's the area I was blessed in. So for me, when I get those challenges, it's actually not just about me.
Yep.
And I actually just posted a reel the other day and I'm like, I have a lot of days where I want to quit. If I'm being super straight up with you guys, owning a business is so freaking hard. Being a parent to a teenager and having a baby and having a wife and like, I'm sure there's people that have way busier lives than me, but I feel stressed and I'm busy. But I feel like I have a purpose to fulfill. And so it makes it hard to quit. And good, good. I'm glad because I would have quit. That's the whole point. And if quitting is just this easy thing for you, and this is exactly why I talk about like buy in and my journey of like, oh, I bought my house and I quit my job the day after I close and backed myself in a corner on purpose to start this business because I'm a human. Quitting's easy. It is, and it feels good, and it's the cheap route. And I was scared that I would quit. So I did everything in my power to make it, if I did quit, oh boy, like I would have, my life would have crumbled. So it really wasn't an option. Good, good. And that's what we want people to do with their fitness journey. If you just have an internal conversation, I'm going to start Monday. It doesn't mean anything. It means nothing, especially especially if you don't follow through. It means nothing. Stop even having that conversation with yourself. You are cheating yourself. It means something when you bought the workout clothes, you got the supplements, you bought the gym membership, money, because money's emotional, it ties you in. You bought the coach. Now we're talking. There you go. You put your money where your mouth is. I always say, check somebody's bank account. You're going to find out what's most important to them 100% of the time. And so, you know, this isn't necessarily just about like an emotional commitment, but that's why quitting's easy. And I will tell you right now, I think quitting causes depression. I do. Or, it influences it. I'm not saying like if you're a quitter, you're depressed. That's not what I'm saying. This isn't a, a, a topic about like if you should be on medication or if you shouldn't, whatever. I'm just saying, regardless of your state, if you're somebody, medication not, clinical depressed not, if you quit, that curates more depression. It doesn't feel good. It's sad. And I feel like depression, for me, how I feel in my life, is a feeling of hopelessness, right? There's no hope. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. To me, that's what I would what my sentence would be if I could describe it. No hope, hopelessness, right? Like that is depression. And then depression leads to anxiety, and anxiety is anticipatory, right? What, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen in the future? You don't really have anxiety about things that already happened. And if you go, well, yeah, I do. No, you have anxiety about things that already happened because you're afraid what that's gonna make you feel like tomorrow or what's gonna happen in the future. So anxiety is super anticipatory. But here's the thing. This is why quitting, I feel, causes more depression and anxiety, because you anticipate negative. Okay, here we go on Monday. Deep internal conversation. Am I actually going to do it? Why are you even anticipating that you might fail? And I'm not telling you I'm even 100% confident 100% of the time, but you have more of that. And then you start having anxiety around it. What if I don't follow through? What if I don't? What if? Well, there's some things in my life where that conversation doesn't take place anymore. Like I know I'm going to do it. And if the stars don't align and I crash and burn, I'm like, I'll pick myself up and do it again. And I will do it again and again and again until I literally die. That's a hard mindset to have. I know Mike is a savage like that too. And there's other areas of my life that I am not that confident in, and I doubt myself for sure. I'm human, but there's some areas that I do hard things in where like I don't care. I will. The most confident that I feel like I could be in certain things, just because the fact that I won't give up, not even my skill. And so that quitting, that non-quit mindset, and I know a lot of you guys, if you're first responders and military, that's been bred into you, hopefully, at some freaking capacity. Like you have an inner freaking savage in you. Where are they? Are they asleep? Are they locked up? What have you been doing to them? Have you been just coddling them for so long that that version of you doesn't exist anymore? Right? Like you have to ask yourself these questions, because if you can't, if you are just in the habit of quitting, and and look, this is for all the buckets of your life. This is what I faith, family, fitness, finance. I say friends, which is relationship. There's a lot of areas. It's not just working out, right? But you gotta figure out like where do you want that long term. Where do you want to be? What kind of mind do you want to be? And here's the thing: I'm in a group right now, with a mastermind group with very successful business owners. You talk to 10 of them, and you feel like you talk to the same person in a way, and it just shows that the quality of these, I would consider them successful, financially successful, great husbands, great fathers, really deep into their faith. Like all the areas of their life are like they're working on them. They're not perfect. They're working on them diligently. And these people have no quit, zero. And they're not depressed. It is from what I've seen. Not saying you can't, but they're not anxious people. They're cool, calm, collected, and they freaking execute because they're not like quitting is not an option for them. Um, I mean, do you feel like that's kind of bleeds into your life too, Mike, in certain areas?
Yeah, and then you also surround yourself. You're like more inclined to surround yourself by people with the same mentality, and you kind of create like a tribe. Like I don't have many friends that quit, and it's not like I refuse to hang out with that person. It's just you start to not have things in common with people that don't have similar values to you. And I have some friends that will quit on stuff, but for the most part, I mean, like all my friends, if I was like, "Hey, we're gonna do this really hard hike tomorrow, are you down?" I'm like, I'm in. They're just like down or whatever. It's never like, "Oh, well, I could, but my knee hasn't been like." It's just everyone's like, "Yeah, I'm in. Let's do it." And you get those yes people around you, and like in a positive yes men, not like a echo chamber, but people that are just like they want to grow. They have the growth mindset, and they like pushing themselves, and it's fun. It's fun to hang out with people like that. It's all winners.
Also, you guys might be listening to this and be like, oh, okay, you guys think you're like too good. No, 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 that's not it. Check this out. You ever heard of like CrossFit or group fitness or like right boot camp classes? What is one of the main reasons going there? I used to manage multiple group fitness classes and have my own. So check this out. People go there because it is so hard to quit when other people are in the room. You feel stupid. So people will push themselves, including me, including Mike. When you're on Surviving Man and these Navy SEAL survival shows, if you were by yourself in the woods, you give up quicker. I would too. Like that's human nature. When you surround yourself by people that are pushing you, hey, it goes the opposite way. When you surround yourself by weak people, like people that are mentally weaker that give up, it's easy to give up. Like we see this, it's the sheep mentality. I'm guilty of it. I would like if I were to push myself in my garage on my own, I know when I go to a class, I'm going to push myself harder. I'm not saying I don't push myself. I'm not saying go to a class, just putting some perspective here. And if you surround yourself by people that don't challenge themselves, you might not fall in, but you're going to be lonely. And I had to experience that for me. Like I love some of my best friends, and they're people that don't challenge themselves. And maybe in some areas of their life they don't, but I want to be a multi-dimensional man. And so for me, I want to challenge myself in all those areas. It doesn't mean I don't love them. It doesn't mean I don't talk to them. It doesn't mean I don't breathe life into that person. I do all those things, but I don't feel as connected. And I have to kind of protect how much I'm around those people because I know they're going to be like, oh, just do this, or that's not important to me, or whatever. And this isn't like a life podcast, but I'm telling you, it goes into the quitting because if you surround yourself by people that easily quit, you will also easily quit unless you're just a lone ranger. And that sucks. And I actually just made a post on this with you in it about like finding your tribe, finding people that like to challenge themselves. And it's not a better or worse or superior or putting on a pedestal. It's just like, what do you want out of your life? If you want to be somebody that that challenges yourself and accomplishes, because like I feel like I have a purpose. Hopefully, if you're listening to this, you feel like you have a purpose. Everybody has, whatever that is for you. If you're just like, I'm just existing, yeah, it is hard to not quit. Who cares? Who cares? But if you're like, man, I know my time's finite. Like I am going to die. You are going to die at some point. Sorry to be morbid. And from now until the day I die, hopefully I get to die peaceful on my deathbed and I can reminisce on all the memories. And if that happens, if I'm that lucky, I want to be like, I was a badass. Like I did some stuff. I left a freaking legacy. I put it all on the line. I challenged myself. Not, yeah, it was really just comfortable life. Nobody thinks about that. Like, what legacy do you want to live? And that all starts with like challenging yourself and having ability to not quit, because we know that life is going to punch us in the face. Like I've been through some stuff. Mike, I know you've been through some stuff. If you're listening to this, maybe you've been through stuff that's 10 times harder than me, but you're still here. You're still fighting at some capacity. But like, how do you want the fight to be? Do you just want to kind of like, I just kind of got through life? Because a lot of people get there. Like a lot of people just get through life.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about older and on your deathbed. I always use that in my head. So there's two things that I do to push myself. One is perspective and gratitude. I go, it could be worse. So the marathon, like like legs were like broken at like mile 13. I ended up finishing, the whole marathon at 26.2 miles. And I just remember, I'm like, dude, you could have a weight vest on. Do you know how much more shitty this would be if you had a weight vest on? And that's my mindset. I'm like, dude, thank God
Yeah.
I'm lightweight right now. Because it would be way worse if I had a weight vest on. Then I'm thinking people could be shooting at me. I could be doing this going uphill on a mountain with a rucksack and people shooting at grenades at me and RPGs and stuff like that. It would be way worse. So
Epic.
be grateful. No, you have no enemies right now. You're not. It's not a combative marathon. It's just you by yourself. And
Yeah.
then I was always thinking, at like mile 22, I'm just like, 4 more. Like you're like, I think this is mile 23. And then you see 22 and you're like, I'm only at 22. Like, what the hell? And then I was just imagining in my head, and I use David Goggins, kill your inner bitch. I was just imagining, I'm like, can you imagine being 80 years old and you wish you had the legs to run and you wish you had the strength that you have now in your youth, and you quit that marathon at 22, you'd have been regretting that your entire life. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, so I use the old version of me. Like, I look into the future. I'm like, what would 85-year-old Mike say? He'd think you're a bitch if you quit
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. And I think one thing too, and this is solely for just the men that are fathers. I have a almost 4-month old son and a 13-year-old son. So my 13-year-old's full of testosterone and wants to play football and tackle me and beat me up. And I hope I've instilled some value, because he's seen me just working in our garage gym and just grinding at this business. And I know I'm instilling so much values in him. And I know if you're a dad, you want your son to be a freaking warrior, hopefully, right? Just an animal and a good person too. And so I try to instill all those values, but I also, where do leaders lead best from? From the front, from
Yep.
taking action. I can't talk. I can't be like, yeah, you should be healthy and you should be a good husband and you should do this and just be this like fat slob, right? That's lazy. I have to do the things. I have to talk the talk. I have to lead from that way, because if you have kids, they don't listen to your words. They follow your actions. And sometimes that's not good. I've been there, but I have to lead from the front. And so my thing is like, I know I'm having influence on people. Hopefully it's positive. You might hate me. If you hate me, don't listen to this podcast. But
Too late now.
yeah, I want to lead from the front. And so I know the way that I can do it is by like pushing myself and challenging myself. And I hope that even if I never said one word, my son can look at me and be like, I don't know, dude. I just saw my dad like being a freaking animal and just like doing hard things. And he pushed through it and he was in tears and he was frustrated and stressed, but like he kept going and he kept going. And that determination, and it's transferable without one sentence being spoken. And when we know that, because the old school parents are like, yeah, my dad barely talked to me, but he worked hard and they end up becoming hard workers.
Yep.
So like, we know that's true. I'm focusing on being a better parent and teaching my son and value and faith and all those things too. But like, I want my son, and you know, as a parent, if your son was like, I'm going to quit college, I'm going to quit, you'd be like, no, don't quit. How can you even say that when you quit, when you give up, when you can't even freaking stay with an exercise routine for 30 days, when you can't track your macros, when you can't meal prep, when you can't be on date nights with your wife that you promised her, when you can't, I mean, come on, dude, the list goes on. How do you expect your children to follow in your footsteps? Oh, because you said so. They don't care what you say, they care what you do. And so as a father, I'm glad I have children. I'm glad I had a kid young because it has held me to a higher standard of not wanting to quit because I'm in the limelight of my family and I'm the leader of my home, I believe. And so my wife's watching me too. And I want to be that like rock, you know? And so for me, it's a very personal thing. I have this business, I have a lot going on me. Good. Cause I'm
Great.
a quitter. We're all quitters. You know that. Like at a deep, we all have the ability to quit. I just want everything making it to where it is miserable to quit. Miserable. And that's why you go to like, if I was on my deathbed, people are like, that's stupid. That is extreme. No, no, no. Mike's going to the place, doesn't matter. Go whatever place you need to in your head where you're like, I'm not quitting. If the deepest, darkest place, doesn't matter. Because did he do it? Hell yeah, he did. Hell yeah. Right. And now he can own that. And now he has that confidence. It's like putting on armor, dude. You're just like a little more confident, a little more confident. And every task that Mike now challenges himself with, he's like, I could do that. Like, and there's carryover. There's carryover to his business and everything like that. So, yeah, dude. I mean, I know you've done a lot of hard stuff. I think you might have me beat on some of the physical challenges. So maybe I need to do more ice baths and marathons
We
or
got to take a fight. Let's do it.
let's go.
I'm not
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe. Yeah, dude. So hopefully this episode, guys, got you got you on fire a little bit, but hopefully you learn too. There's a lot of, and I didn't want this to be a super scientific podcast. I wanted to be very conversational. There's a lot of scientific research that shows like behavioral science on like quitting long term really does have detrimental effects on your brain. And we'll just look at from an action standpoint. You probably live a life where you want to execute regularly. It's really hard to execute when you don't have the confidence. And you will know if you talk to people that are like, I talk to people that are multi millionaires, very successful entrepreneurs at a young age. And it's usually the speed of execution and the confidence when they execute.
Yep.
Not just taking stupid risks, but like, oh, it's going to be done and I do it. And like, if you start second guessing yourself, good luck. If you're in battle as a soldier or a law enforcement, you start second guessing yourself, not a good idea. So my thing is like, you want to just exude confidence in every area of your life. Confidence is a muscle. You have to work on it. Quitting is a muscle. It goes both ways. You don't work it, it atrophies. It's weak. It's easier to quit. You work it, you become a badass. It's actually easier not to quit, which is probably where you want to go. So, um, I appreciate it, guys. I do ask one thing because we don't run ads. We don't do any of this stuff. If you can like this episode or subscribe if you're on Spotify or YouTube, give us a rating. I would really appreciate it. Or share this if you're like, bro, this was fire. I needed this today because it's February, March. I kind of told myself at the beginning of the year that it was going to be different, and I really haven't followed through. Good. And the last thing, and this is my plug for you guys, is if you feel like you need more oomph to hold you, like accountability, financial, do a program. Like that's why we have what we have and we're very good at what we do because the people that come to us go, I need the guidance, I need the education, I need the skin in the game. I need to invest. I need a coach that's going to hold me accountable because I want to make it hard to freaking quit. That's literally what we do. I wouldn't even be talking to you. I'd be out of a business. Me and Mike wouldn't have jobs if it didn't work. And it works, and it works very well. So I appreciate it, guys. I love you. If you have any questions, drop them below, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. You can go to my Instagram, which is Stephen_Coons_fit, or to our website, thepursuithp.com, and fill out a form to chat with us. Other than that, Mike, you got any last words, brother?
Don't quit. No,
No, don't quit.
just look to the future. That's what I always say. Like, look at your future self. You're always be grateful. Someone could have it way worse than you. If you got legs and you got arms, or at least three, or at least two, or at least one, you can be doing something. Everyone makes an excuse. They let 1% of their body control what the other 99% does. Oh, I feel something kind of weird in like this thing or whatever. Okay, great. You still have abs. You still have low back. You can do. The other arm you can work. Like, just stop using excuses and just do something. Just
Right.
The hardest exercise is getting in the gym. Start,
Yeah.
and that's you'll never regret it.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this, I legit believe in you. I know you're like, you don't even know me. No, I believe in you. I've seen people do some crazy things where I thought like this person's not going to do anything and is negative of me, maybe, but we're human, we're judgmental. Like, oh, this person's not going to do very well, or man, I just didn't give me the vibe. And I've seen people just like pull themselves out of the deepest depths and just crush life. And I know we've seen success stories. Um, don't get that far. Don't make yourself go through that. Look to the future. Start crushing it right now. If you don't take actions, things usually only get worse. We know that. We all know that deep inside. So appreciate it, guys, and we'll talk to you next time.